We Americans today live in a very unusual period of our history when a supposedly highly educated college professor or a federal judge at a Senate hearing can publicly state that a man with gonads dressed in women's clothes is a woman. That is delusional, and I think it can be attributed all the way back to her lack of belief in God. Episode 125B. Can we re-resurrect God in Boston? And spiritual, but not religious. Continued from episode 125A. So as of today, how many folks are religious and how many are unchurched at the beginning of 2026 in Cambridge? I could not easily find Christian churches other than Catholic member numbers in 2025, so I will use only Catholic Church member numbers in 2025 for this episode 125B. In 2025, Cambridge's total population has grown to about 122,000, but the Catholic share has declined sharply to approximately 35,000 individuals, or about 29%. Why? According to publicly available information, read so-called experts, there are many reasons. For instance, the secularization trend, the 2002 clergy abuse scandal, and general suburban migration. Also, the demographics show a higher proportion of non-religious and non-Christian groups such as Asians and nuns, spelled N-O-N-E-S. The Archdiocese of Boston now reports about 1.8 million Catholics with 144 parishes, down from over 400 parishes in the mid-20th century. Weekly Mass attendance is just 17% of self-identified Catholics. Also, parish mergers in 2004 have consolidated Greater Boston's parishes. That means that Cambridge has reduced its number of distinct parishes. The Archdiocese refers to ethnic Catholic churches as those originated to serve a specific immigrant group, for instance, Portuguese, Italian, or Hispanic. Based on the current listings, there are no Roman Catholic affiliated Byzantine or Maronite Rite parishes in Cambridge. The closest are in nearby areas like Belmont or Brighton. Below is a list of the relevant parishes in Cambridge. Some still have ethnic connections. Today there are 6 Roman Catholic parishes in Cambridge compared to 10 in 1940. St. Anthony Parish, Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish, St. Mary of the Annunciation Parish, St. Peter Parish, St. Paul Parish, and St. John the Evangelist Parish. Also in Cambridge there are 2 Orthodox churches, St. Mary's Albanian Orthodox Church and St. Constantine and St. Helen Greek Orthodox Church. And now the unchurched information in 2025. Cambridge has an estimated population of 121,000 residents. Recent data on religious affiliation is limited, as the U.S. Census Bureau does not collect it directly, and surveys like the Pew Research Center and the Public Religion Research Institute typically aggregate at the state or metro level. Based on Pew's 2023 through 2024 religious landscape study, approximately 41% of adults in Greater Boston identify as religiously unaffiliated, which is described as atheist, agnostic, or nones. That's N-O-N-E-S. Adjusting to Cambridge's younger median age and a more educated populace, unaffiliated rates turn out to exceed 50% among those under 30. This figure likely similar or slightly higher if looked at Cambridge-wide. Applying 41% to Cambridge's total population yields an estimate of 50,000 unchurched individuals. For context, Massachusetts statewide unchurched is 37%, while the United States average is 29%. This is a huge difference from 1940. So unchurched folks from 23% of 1940's Cambridge population to 41% today. What do I think about this phenomenon? I lived 66% of a century, or 61 years, in the 20th century, and 25%, or 25 years, in the 21st century. So I should have a bird's eye view of the change. I was born at Cambridge City Hospital, so I have American citizenship, but I also have Irish citizenship through my parents. Thus, my love for all things American and Irish. So I am somewhat representative of Native Americans and immigrant Americans. So my take on both centuries is not as some future researcher, but more as a participant, sometimes as a rogue, sometimes as a straight shooter, always as a city dweller, as a Roman Catholic, as an American, and as an immigrant, and as an entrepreneur, and as a Bostonian, and as a Cantabrigian. We are told that in the USA, about 30% claim no religion at all. That could be explained by a combination of historic, cultural, and spiritual factors. I think the following are the reasons for this massive decline in religious practice among Americans. Beginning with the current national Catholic situation with a statistic of 40 to 50% of self-identified Catholics attending Mass less than once a month. So what happened? First, modernism. Earlier popes, and especially Pope John Paul, my favorite pope, by the way, called modernism and the culture of death hostile to supernatural faith. The culture of death is described as the acceptance of free abortion, divorce, open homosexuality, contraception, the growing suicide rates, and the trans surgery of children. The 1960s, with its almost full acceptance of individualism, consumerism, relativism, and the sexual revolution, directly undermined the then existing Catholic objective moral order. That moral order could be, in shorthand, described as the sanctity of marriage and the need for redemption from sin. When a society no longer reinforces belief in God, sin, final judgment, and eternity, then religion feels optional or even oppressive. Next, Vatican II. Many Orthodox Catholics and numerous bishops' conferences argue that Vatican II, with its liturgical and catechetical collapse, was catastrophic. Mass then became casual and more entertainment-oriented, and often irreverent, and sometimes even heretical. Catechesis shifted from memorization of the Baltimore Catechism to vague self-esteem programs that really mentions sin, hell, or real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. Those factors produced two generations who were functionally ignorant of the faith. Surveys repeatedly show that huge percentages of Catholics do not believe in the real presence, the necessity of the Church for salvation, or basic moral teachings on contraception, abortion, and homosexuality. Next, clergy sex abuse. Our local Boston Globe series on clergy sex abuse in 2002 shattered our trust of the Church. Even though the rate of abuse was no higher than in other institutions, the betrayal by priests and the cover ups by the bishops made the church look hypocritical. Many walked away in disgust. Believing Catholics became rudderless, especially those of us raised in the 50s and 60s and were schooled on sin, confession, and the real presence of Christ at Holy Communion. We were scandalized by prominent Catholic politicians, especially Democrats, who publicly supported abortion, same-sex marriage, and gender ideology while receiving communion from their seemingly acquiescing priests. Doctrine did not seem to matter to ordinary church-attending Catholics if their bishops did not stand up and deny immoral elected officials the Eucharist, or if those same bishops did not speak out bravely and clearly. A 2023 Pew study found nearly half of Republicans, 48%, say religion is very important in their lives, while only 28% of Democrats feel the same. On worship attendance, 41% of Republicans go to religious services monthly or more often, which is double the 24% share among Democrats. Every elected official above state rep or state senator in Massachusetts is a Democrat. What should we do about that here in heavily Democrat Massachusetts? Next, prosperity and comfort. Sunday has become just another day for travel, sports, shopping, and brunch. St. Thomas Aquinas and other spiritual writers noted that material abundance makes people forget their dependence on God. Americans are busy and distracted by football games, entertainment, and social media, and simply don't feel the need for weekly Mass or the sacraments. Next, weak family transmission of faith. Because of widespread collapse of Christian and Catholic marriage, the domestic church has disintegrated. The single biggest predictor of whether someone remains a practicing Catholic is whether their father went to Mass regularly. High divorce rates, widespread contraception, and cohabitation results from high divorce rates. Grandmother went to church weekly. Mother was lukewarm about Mass. And now kids never heard of the Eucharist. Why would we expect anything else? Next, cultural hostility. Millennials and Gen Z folks increasingly see traditional Christian moral teachings on sexuality as bigoted. Elites look down on practicing Catholics. So for those seeking social status, it becomes a no-no to be a Roman. Universities, media people, and billionaires are the social arbiters, not bishops. It seems for an American, the higher the IQ, the less likely is his belief in God. The feeble and inane expression, spiritual but not religious, is everywhere. Next, immigrant patterns aren't helping. For decades, Hispanic immigration kept the United States Catholic numbers artificially high. As second and third Latinos assimilate into the same secular culture, their religious retention rates are plummeting too, revealing that the problem is not just white Catholics. My conclusions is, as a believing Roman Catholic who is a sinner but not an apostate, I quote from Our Lady of Fatima's warning that the sins of the world and failures within the Church would lead to a massive loss of faith. I see the current situation as both a purification and God's judgment. The Catholic Church in America is shrinking to a smaller, more committed remnant. The solution will always be the same: more brave bishops and priests, a return to reverent liturgy, rigorous catechesis, including confession, Sunday Mass, and more clear episcopal teaching, the return of our kids to parochial school, family prayer, rosaries, and the unapologetic preaching of the full gospel, especially on the difficult subjects like parenting, contraception, homosexuality, lifelong marriage, and abortion. In other words, the hard teachings. See my episode 46 on eugenics and the Fernal School. In short, from a faithful Catholic viewpoint, America isn't becoming unchurched because the Christ crucified faith was tried and found wanting. Instead, it's becoming unchurched because in far too many places that Christ crucified faith was not tried at all, or was presented in a watered down and emasculated version that simply cannot compete with the comfort and supposedly worldliness of our well off present day citizens. This is Rod Murphy. Thank you for viewing or listening to my YouTube and podcast episodes. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed them, please hit the subscribe button. It does not cost you anything, and it helps me to grow my audience. Again, my thanks. Episode 23, World War II Homefront. What I saw growing up during World War II, unlike today, was that Americans were much more patriotic and willing to sacrifice for the country and for